Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a book review of the book Blood of the Fold, the third book in the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. I've read the first two books in the Sword of Truth series. I read Wizard's First Rule in March of 2021, and overall I had a positive experience with this book. It was very tropey, but I had a positive experience with it. My only problem was of the torture sequences, which I did not like. But if you take those out, it was an amazing book. Loved it. And then I picked up the Behemoth Stone of Tears, and I do not remember too much about this book. And I picked this up in like October, so this was like of 2021. So this was like a year and a half ago that I picked this one up. And what I remember from it, I read through my review, and I remember that there were moments and scenes that I thought were really good, but overall I thought it was way too long, overwrought. I thought that it didn't add enough originality. I thought it was too derivative, and I thought that he was kind of meandering too much. Also, I thought that, he was totally borrowing from Wheel of Time. And I read this. This is the shortest book of the three, so I'll give him marks for cutting it down a little. This is still very derivative and does not have the feeling, I don't think, that the first book had in terms of being original and being a great read. That being said, this is a fun book, and I had a lot of fun with it. Normally, the beginning will hook me and or the end will hook me, and the middle will be a slog. This book is like the most weird contradiction in terms in that I thought the opening was pretty boring and the ending was like entertaining but not like well done. But I thought the middle was quite excellent. It's just such a weird feeling to have with the book. But I thought the middle here was quite well. It was quite well done. So let's get into the meat of the book. Now that Richard has achieved more power, he's free from the power of the sisters, he is now trying to unite the countries of the New World in order to protect them from the threat of the Imperial Order down in the Old World. And he is going through all of the main cities and towns, and he's trying to just unite the people and come up with a way for them to work together without him becoming a despot. He doesn't want to just rule with absolute power in the same way that his father, Darkenrall, did. And so you see him kind of make concessions, and he's like, all right, you must all bend the knee, but you will still get to rule your people. And it's like, how does that work? If they're bending the knee, how are they? Anyway, he makes it work. And so he's slowly amassing power, amassing plans and troops, and he's thinking about things. And at the same time, he's also really missing, I call her Kalan, but apparently I heard from a friend of mine who's read the series that it's pronounced Kalan. And there's no other way to pronounce it. Kalan. Must be Kalan. I'm going to call her Kalan because that's what I remember. But if you feel strongly, let me know in the comments. But Kalan is separated. She and Zed are on their way. They're trying to make their way to Richard in the city that he's in, and they kind of get waylaid a few times. You also have stories about the Sisters of the Light who are living down in Tanimura, and they are dealing with all the political situations, and they're kind of not entirely sure how to deal with Richard, and they're a little bit scared of what's happening. And then you also have the Blood of the Fold, who is both worried about Richard and worried about the Imperial Order, and then of course you have the Imperial Order itself, which doesn't get much page time. But you have all of those different political forces all interweaving. And if this sounds like kind of how the Wheel of Time series is, it absolutely feels like it's the Wheel of Time. It is amazing how Goodkind refuses to acknowledge that he's borrowing from other series and would refuse to acknowledge that he's a fantasy series, when in every element of a fantasy series, he is a fantasy series. Every element of this matches the fantasy tropes, fantasy archetypes, fantasy world building, fantasy everything. I mean, it's a fantasy series. The The action I thought was interesting in some scenes, but what really works for me is the political dialogue. Not necessarily the political situations, because as I said, the political situations are so similar to Wheel of Time. I even, in my written review, called it Discount Wheel of Time, because it is so obviously Wheel of Time. But I do think that there are some of the times where characters are having political dialogues where this book shines. And the reason it shines there is because Terry Goodkind is a kind of objectivist, kind of like Ayn Rand. And so on the political scale, I think he would probably fall under he's closer to like a libertarian in a lot of his beliefs. Although in some beliefs here, I think he's conservative. And so he provides a unique perspective that I like because it's interesting having more than one perspective among your novelists, especially in the fantasy genre. And there is a sequence where two Sisters of the Light are having a discussion on whether or not they should let their people their men in particular, be promiscuous in the city, and whether or not they should just let them go out and have fun and things like that. And the argument that basically comes up is, no, we can't do that because we have to worry about two-parent homes, and we do not want children to be growing up in only one-parent homes, or even worse, no-parent homes, and we don't want men abandoning their obligations, and they believe that all this, these things that men would be doing in their promiscuous activities are come with obligations. Like, you can't just do them without. Like, if you're going to do one, you have to be ready for the other. And so there's an interesting dialogue there that happens. And I was like, that is just a fascinating discussion to be had in the fantasy genre. Like, that is like something that you'd expect to find in a nonfiction book, a discussion like that, but instead we're getting it in a fantasy novel. There's also times where Richard is presenting people with a moral argument of, this is the type of government we should have. And there are discussions on, should we have kind of a monarchy? Should we have more of an elected? Should we all be small governments that react to a large government? Should we have a large government that reacts to small? Like, how does the governmental system work? And it's a great discussion. And that's why I think that Terry Goodkind was able to get the readers he did, was he was able to split off the readers who were interested in he was getting the something old from Wheel of Time, the something new was his political beliefs, and the something borrowed was Wheel of Time, and the something blue is the cover. Sorry, had to make that joke. For which it bothers me that, like, I found this one in like the black cover and this one in the black cover, but then I found this one in the blue cover. But that's what I found at the bookstores when I was buying the books, because I'm buying these used, because I'm not particularly, intent on collecting this series in another way. I actually thought that the most interesting villains in the book were the Blood of the Fold characters. I thought that Tobias Brogan, I believe is his name, I thought that he was really fascinating. The way that he manipulated people was great. The way he manipulated that Duke and Duchess was just horrifying. And his blasé attitude towards their lives was just amazing. And it was freaky how scary he was. And it got me excited. Hey, I want to see how the resolution is. And I've heard that the resolution in Book 4, Temple of the Winds, makes it kind of worth it. But I'm not entirely so sure. Because this seems like a setup book, and that'll be a big payoff book. I will criticize the book in one way. The map here at the end leaves off several of the cities and lands that they're talking about. So you don't necessarily understand everything that the characters are saying. I had to go online and look up a more detailed version of the map in order to find it, and that was not right. They should have, if you're going to have lands mentioned in your novel, they should be pretty much explained. The only exception I would give is the Cosmere, because he has different planets and they're planet jumping. But even then, Brandon Sanderson typically includes pretty good maps with pretty detailed, explanations of everything. This book left off entire cities that were in the book. It's not just that these cities were, just happened to be offhanded reference. They're in the book, and they're not even present. Anyway, you have other elements of the book I thought were really well done. I thought that the way that we led up to the climax was really interesting. Getting Richard away from the town he was in to the town he needed to be in for the climax was really well done. And I also thought that the way that we were able to get Kalan into that same town and Zed into that same town, and we're able to get all the sisters into that town and the Imperial Order. Like, everything fell into place really nicely. I just think that while it was kind of entertaining, the ending could have been built up a little bit better. But I don't know how. I'm just saying, it just felt like it was missing something. But that's just me. So, overall, I think it's a fine book, an entertaining book, but it is, I think, the weakest book I've read in this month so far. And it's kind of sad because, I read both of these in 2021 and then didn't read a book in the series in 2022, so I waited all the way to 2023. And I feel like I don't have the drive to read another book for a long time. And that's sad because I do own books 4 and 5. Book 4, Temple of the Winds, which finishes up the Blood of the Fold arc, and then book 5, Soul of the Fire, which will finish up, or which will start a new plot line apparently. And it's like there are things about Goodkind's writing that I want to read, but he just writes long books that I don't think needed to be long. And a lot of people say that about Robert Jordan. A lot of people say that about Brandon Sanderson. And I understand why they would say it. For me, I love how long those books are. Sometimes. But this one, it just lacked enough of the importance to be an amazing book or a great book. I would say it's a good book. It's entertaining. And if you just want some good fantasy, maybe pick this up. But if you have other series that you're more interested in reading, then read those instead. So that is my review of Blood of the Fold. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. Entertaining, but not amazing. 6 out of 10. So if you've read this book, what did you think of it? Let me know in the comments section down below. And what do you think of Terry Goodkind's, the way he incorporates his beliefs into his writing? What do you think about the way that he brings old and new at the same time, and his derivation of the different genres, all that stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. Please subscribe to the channel where I have a ton of fantasy content and other genres as well. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.